half a dozen or so questions that I had kind of thought up and called from either people that contacted us ahead of time for the session or just from my own staff and own thoughts and things. But I don't want the discussion to be limited to those. So please, if you have questions at any time, feel free to pop those in the chat or unmute your mics and ask them as well. Similarly, I'm not here as the information resource as much as I am just to sort of help keep the conversation flowing. And so I'm hoping to learn from all of you some of the answers that you have or information you have on some of these questions. So since we're talking about information and sharing information, the first question I wanted to kind of pose to the group and see is during everything people that you've reached out to, have you found the most useful in your work and in your library's work?
On and off, and it's very difficult to.
Excellent. I'm seeing a couple of chats come in. Keep those coming just while people are putting things in the chat, or if you have something you want to share via audio, you can unmute your mic. I'll just tell you from my experience, one of the resources that I found most useful is it's in fact my colleagues. One of the places I get a lot of the information that I used early on in terms of reopening plans or other kinds of plans and things like that came from the WICU Library Directors listserv. Within WICU, Wisconsin Independent Colleges and Universities, we have a listserv that library directors share information and message each other and things like that. And that has been extremely helpful for me, at least. All right, here, my next question is a little more specific, but also at least here in Madison, kind of a timely question. Is as we think about reopening our institutions, and for those of us that are going to be welcoming students and faculty and staff back onto campus, I'd be interested to hear how many of your campuses are planning or have discussions centered around testing students, faculty, or staff for COVID. Excellent. I'm seeing things coming through the chat. Keep those coming. And I'm seeing a variety of things. I know at Edgewood, we're encouraging students, similar to some other institutions, to have had a test before they come to campus. We're requiring it if they've done certain types of travel. And throughout the semester, I think that plan is still kind of emerging a little bit. Excellent. Yeah, thank you for all these answers. These are super interesting. Yeah, and that aspect of cost in terms of those tests is also a big factor too, isn't it? I'm seeing some people are talking about offering free tests to faculty and staff. Wonderful. Another point of discussion or question that I had is as again as we think about welcoming folks back onto our campuses, even if it's for a virtual start to that virtual campus, is what is your library's plans centered around new student or faculty orientations? Are you doing those activities fully virtual? Are you doing any of those things in person? How has that changed from what you do usually? And I'll give you an example at my institution. We had to radically change our new student orientation, both in content and format. We are going to be offering part of it in person and part of it virtually. We're going to have small groups of 4 to 6 students in these orientation pods. Being a smaller private college, we have that luxury, but we also have to significantly change our content. In years past, we've had a problem-based learning activity that the students did that was themed around a zombie apocalypse spurned by a viral contagion. And for obvious reasons, we didn't think that theme was appropriate this year. So we had to redo that. But what kinds of things or participation are you all having in new student or new staff and faculty orientations? And the chat's great. Keep those chats coming, but don't be bashful at all if you want to turn on your mic and offer a question or make a comment. Please do so.
Well, I'll just break the ice. This is Jennifer, and I just want to say a zombie apocalypse sounds pretty darn good right now. So, maybe rethink that. It would add some levity.
Thanks, Jennifer.
My camera is misbehaving, so I'll just talk here. Our welcome week is still being it's in formation, right? So we're not exactly sure what's going to happen. What we do know is that it's going to be sort of more compressed because students will be coming onto campus in stages. We don't know how many are going to be coming onto campus, but it's going to be sort of some on Tuesday morning and some on Tuesday afternoon and some on Wednesday morning and some on Wednesday afternoon. And so sort of in-person stuff is less likely to happen, especially because they're all going to need to be tested as soon as they get there, right? And so they may be in quarantine until classes start, so we'll be doing virtual stuff. We're developing some online materials for a summer institute, which is a sort of a pre-college bridge sort of program. Right. And so we're going to probably adapt those to Welcome Week and sort of feed that out to students who may be in quarantine and don't have anything else to do. So it's going to be an adventure, of course. So.
Most definitely. Thanks, Pete. Other folks, anyone else have something they'd like to share? All right. This is obviously causing a lot of change in our institutions, a lot of change in our library. And so I thought it'd be interesting kind of explore as a group what kinds of policy related changes have you needed to make in your libraries? I'll just give some examples. Here at Edgewood, we've re-examined our policies centered around food and drinks in the library. We have decided to amend them slightly, but not ban those things completely. Although there was significant discussion on our campus about eating and drinking in the classroom, especially in a mask required environment. Also, access to the library from non-staff, non-faculty, non-enrolled students, so community members or guests in that way, as well as library, thinking about library hours and other services in different environments here. So what kinds of changes or things have you all made? And these could be not necessarily policies that you've changed, but maybe things that you're thinking about too.
This is Ann at Lakeland. Our provost would like us to continue having our regular hours to encourage students not to go off campus. We are in a rural setting, and we would prefer the students stick around and not bring anything back with them from the community. So it looks like right now we're going to be keeping regular hours.
Thanks, Ann. Yeah, the hours are really hard. I know at my library, we got hit with the double whammy of also a staffing reduction of our evening staffing and things. And so we had to really look hard at those hours. At the same time, we're under similar directions to try and maintain as many hours as possible to keep our resident students in particular on campus as long as we can. Excellent. Seeing some folks in the chat talking about limiting or eliminating eating or drinking in their libraries. Also making some changes to their physical space. Behind me in my virtual background, this is actually my library as it looked last fall. And we've been spending lots of time moving furniture, taking furniture out of the library, which is on our campus caused kind of a storage problem. We're having trouble finding places to keep and store all the chairs and tables and all the other things that we have in that way. You know.
This is Ann at Lakeland again. We will be moving chairs. We haven't done it yet because we also have a spacing issue. There's no place on campus to put them, so we have to house them in the building, but I have no space to house them in the building other than putting in a corner and hoping to tape them off and say, you know, with caution tape, don't use. The IT department is going to be coming in and moving computers so that they are socially distanced. Right now in our lab, we have rows that face each other, so we're going to be turning them so that they're all facing one direction, and about half of the computers are going to be, I don't know if they're going to take out the whole computer or just the mouse and the keyboard, but we're going to be doing that and then spreading them around the library wherever we can find a port, which we have an old building, so there aren't a whole lot of ports either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the spacing and the storage issues are definitely something I think a lot of libraries are facing, and thank you for sharing, Ian. I'm seeing in the a chat other comments about furniture and storage and spacing. Pete asked a great question that I had on my list too, and so we'll just move to that right now, which is, are people closing the stacks? Are you limiting or eliminating access to collections or entire what typically would be the circulating collection areas of your libraries? going to more of a call stack mode or by appointment, or what kinds of things are people seeing or doing? Excellent. Lots of good information coming in through the chat here too. Excellent. Yeah, thank you all for these comments. Um, I want to, before we move on past physical space and things like that, James has brought up a very interesting point that I think is important as we change our spaces and still keep those accessibility aspects of our buildings in mind. And that is, has anyone had any discussion on their campuses about concerns related to as they move their things around, or James mentions taping off areas, and we're doing that right now in my library as well too. Have you had to address any accessibility issues or other concerns in that way? I know for us, it's been a challenge in terms of we've taken a lot of things out, which has helped, but there are some areas that we have that we would like to restrict the flow of traffic or patrons from in that way, and we've had to be really careful as to um, how that's fitting into those ADA and other accessibility and fire code guidelines for that matter. So, I've seen a lot of great comments and questions back and forth here. I want to just mention to the group, since I'm seeing a great discussion, and this was also a question that I had, is talking about material quarantine plans. What are people doing? How are you handling returned items? It looks like at least a couple of people are going to be doing some form of quarantining materials. But I'd be good to kind of keep that discussion flowing here. So if anyone has anything they'd like to share related to quarantining of materials, either in the chat or by popping on your mic and talking about it with everybody as well too.
This is Jenny Baker from Wisconsin Lutheran. Just for those of us that do interlibrary loan, SCLS sent a message out yesterday. They are quarantining items for 4 days now per Wisconsin DPI request. So that's going to be keeping items quarantined at their facility. So transportation time is going to be a little longer too.
Mm. Yeah, with our interconnectedness, it's we're not all in our own little spaces. Anytime one of us makes a change like that, they definitely impact the rest of us. Thank you for sharing that, Jenny. I didn't realize that. Yeah. have seen discussion in the chat related to specific types of physical materials, whether it be magazines. Also, another kind of specialty area is academic reserves or reserves in the library. For those of you that are going to either be operating virtually or in person in the physical space, how are you handling your academic reserves this year? Are you making any changes to that? Are you going to continue to offer those normally? Being that those turn over quicker, that makes some of our quarantine material quarantine guidelines a little tricky and different in that way. At my institution, we've tried to limit the amount of academic reserves of physical materials we're doing by aggressively replacing them with e-resources whenever possible. We targeted the faculty members who were most heavily using academic reserves back in March when we when our students left and we finished our semester virtually, and have been working all summer with them on getting transitioned over so that we can have as few of those things as possible. And seeing some people have discontinued physical reserves.
Yeah, we're trying to encourage faculty not to use physical reserves at all, given the sort of hybrid nature of our fall term as it currently looks. I mean, who knows what happens next week, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we'll be, as you were saying, we're promoting electronic stuff whenever possible, and trying to send faculty in different directions. Somebody asked about magazines. We have a current magazine shelf out on the first floor, and that's all going into storage, basically. And mostly they're, as somebody said about newspapers in some other conversation, those are mostly read by visitors to campus and not by students so much. So we're going in that direction with a lot of the materials, the high touch materials that we're going to be, that would potentially cause problems according to our friends at Realm. So.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Thanks, Pete. Yeah, I've had kind of an interesting experience related with the reserves and some of these things, in that I was able to a certain extent, use this situation to my library's advantage in for a number of years, I've been trying to generate some interest in open access and open educational OER resources on my campus with kind of limited success. This situation has sort of changed that interest level. And so the college is doing a lot more around that now than before, because I think they see some of the implications of some of these things too. Excellent. So I wanna bring up actually, I'm glad to see that other people are kind of seeing that same OER conversation continue. I think that's great for the state and for libraries as a whole. I want to highlight. Oh, sorry, it was somebody going to say something. I thought I heard a mic.
Yeah, this is Nancy at MyEd. I wanted to respond to Denise. Does anyone have a plan on how to limit the number of people in the library? We don't have a finalized plan yet, but the college has decided not to assign any classrooms because most of the classes will be virtual. So they're looking at using QR codes so that teachers could scan for a room. And I think they might use that in the labs, like we have a 3D lab and a print lab, and we've requested that the library be included in that way. We've also discussed both, using some sort of, we have been given a capacity because they did a capacity for each area in the college. We've talked about like having people sign up, and we just haven't really finalized whether that would be some sort of electronic sign up so that we wouldn't have to keep track of we're at capacity and you can't come in, they'd be able to see that. And then if someone really wanted to sign up and for some reason didn't have access to do it electronically, we could try to do it at the circ desk if we weren't, already full. But we were trying to kind of move away from trying to physically have a person keep track of it. But we still might end up having people kind of sign in as they come in the library.
Excellent. Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, I'd be really interested in hearing more about what different folks are looking at in terms of physical distancing within their building and capacity. I know at Edgewood, I was uncomfortable with the capacity number that our campus kind of came up with. I felt like it was too high, and especially that I didn't think it took into account physical distancing. We're a small institution, smaller size library, and our capacity, our 50% capacity was at about 90 individuals in our library. But that was kind of determined based on people sitting in the different spaces in the library 6 feet apart or more. But from what we already know, my staff and I know of how the library is used, there's spaces that are less used than others. So they factored in people sitting in our info comments in that way. But our info comments is underutilized and is under review for maybe a space repurposing. And so that calculation I thought was a little problematic. And I think the distancing aspect of it is a better way to look at it in some ways. Yep. Yeah, I agree, Nancy. I was really concerned when that number came up in that way. Excellent. I'm just reading through some of these really good chat questions that are coming through. James is asking about what people are doing related to study groups and capstone work and group projects and things like that. That's exactly kind of, to a certain extent, the point I was getting at with that number is that we need some of that space in that way. I know at my institution, we've been lucky so far because most of those kinds of things have been on the graduate level because we don't have much in the way of coursework over the summer for undergrads. And those are online programs for the most part. So that's we've been pretty problem free that way. But I'm concerned with access to group study space. We have a large portion of our students are nursing students who commonly work in pods and study together and have clinicals and things like that together and are accustomed to and to a certain extent trained to work together on some of these things. And so the physical aspect becomes more complicated. Yeah, lots of great comments. Keep them coming. Thank you. I see Jenny's talking about other spaces on their campus being reused in different ways. We certainly have gone through that at Edgewood. We actually have a classroom set up in our chapel now, which our religious studies professor thinks is an absolutely wonderful thing. She's super excited to teach in the chapel, but it makes for some interesting challenges, certainly with IT and power and Wi-Fi and things like that. That took a little retrofitting over the summer there too. Yeah, seeing a lot of good ideas on how we need to be creative with our space and look at using them in different ways or rearranging them in different ways, and certainly still open lots of open concerns about how those things are going to work out and play out in that way. So Nancy and Rachel both have chats going in the chat here talking about instruction, and I think that's an excellent question in that way. What are people kind of, how are you planning to offer instruction, especially if your campus has some in-person coursework taking place in that way? I know at my own institution we made the decision that this fall, we would be offering instruction completely virtually. And so, and that works because for our institution, at least, because our students are also given the option that if and our instructors, we're doing something called high flex, which at our campus basically means courses are going to be offered. There's going to be an in-person classroom. Both the instructor and the students have the choice to be in those classrooms or to be virtually online for every course in that way. So there's a mix in that way. So we're going to be online for instruction. And we're going to be using WebEx.
At Lakeland, our classes are going to be set up that the students will be divided into cohorts, and week 1, cohort A will be in the classroom and cohort B will be online, and then the next week they will switch. So half the time they will be in the room with the faculty member and half the time online. And for for our instruction, we're looking at using Teams, which we are using on campus for any of the meetings that we have, or using Collaborate, which is in Blackboard.
Thanks, Ann. Yeah, we're using WebEx for our instruction, like I said, but I like Teams quite a bit, and we're using that as for all of our departmental and other meetings, virtual meetings within the college in that way. We had a little bit of concern, even though WebEx or Cisco's telling us we shouldn't, but we had some concerns about bandwidth when we go full instruction. And so it's kind of decided to do the non-instructional based meetings in Teams and the instructional based ones in WebEx that way. We also got some feedback from our students in the spring that they didn't like it when different courses and different faculty members were using different tools. They wanted a consistency of delivery in that way. So we've set up some standards at our campus related to that too.
Hey, Nathan, I have a quick question for you on that. When you said you received feedback from folks, how are you soliciting feedback at this point? And this is an open question for others too, of like how you're going to get that sort of engagement from people and then make changes based off of it.
Yeah, I'll just start on and answer the question, Melissa, and then let everybody else answer as well too. But what we did is our Vice President of Academic Affairs has been regularly communicating with students and faculty, mostly through two forms of feedback. One is Qualtrics surveys, so getting survey responses, and then also both our Dean of Students and our Vice President of Academic Affairs have been holding regular what they call town hall meetings, open forums on WebEx, where students, parents, or faculty and staff members in kind of two separate groups in that way can provide feedback and ask questions. But I'd be really interested to hear what other people are doing related to that, because that's a tough one. It was really tough when we sent everybody home in March to try and get enough information about how it went the rest of the semester and things. Excellent. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, good thoughts in the chat for sure. One of the things I wanted to just share with all of you as kind of a preface to the next question I had is I have a fair amount of concern for library workers and for library staff as we enter this semester, thinking about the things they're going to be asked to do, as well as things related to personal safety, and also just to kind of stress management and coaching and mentoring and things. And so I wanted to ask the group, what kinds of things have you done or are you planning to do to support your staff? Whether that be programming or communication or other kinds of things. What sort of supports have you put into place or thinking about? Some people talking about HR resources. In my question, I was kind of thinking specifically about librarians and library staff members in that way. But certainly how our campuses are supporting all of us, including faculty and other staff members, it could easily fit into the idea here. Jenny's asking about some physical protection at my campus. We've compressed our public service desk down to just about a third of what was originally a desk. We had one of those kind of wraparound multi-station desks in that way that had both a reference location and two separate circulation locations. We've moved the reference part of it to being virtual for the semester, and we've taken one of those two circulation units and completely encased it on three sides in plexi. And we, like some other people have done too, we're creating a 6-foot barrier in front of that desk with both floor markings and some carts and things like that. We had a mobile return cart, so we're putting that in front in one of those areas. Also, making sure that we had enough supplies in terms of gloves, masks, face shields for folks that wanted those, especially if you were going to come into our info commons area and work with individuals at the computers where you would be maybe a little closer. There was also some thought that we might be able to use those plexiglass with student populations that read lips or are hard of hearing and things. So we're looking at that too. Excellent. Thank you for sharing, everyone. I'm seeing lots of great information in the chat here. A couple of people have asked about the Plexi, how people are getting it. It's been tough to get a hold of, and also at least financially pretty expensive in some ways. And we were lucky to get some through a local vendor earlier on in the spring, and we have the style that is stand up, so it has kind of like a little bracket that has a foot on either end, and it stands up on our counter itself. I will tell you, one of our staff members was at a local hobby store and saw a really great solution that was low cost and easy to set up, where they had not plexiglass, but clear vinyl sheeting that they put dowels on either end, and almost like a tapestry could hang in the front of their POS registers and things like that. They put magnets or weights on the bottom end of it to make sure that it was as straight up and down as possible. But that was an interesting solution too. Seeing a lot of people talking about masks in the chat, and one question that I kind of had related to that, and this goes back a little bit to staff support or kind of orienting staff to a new work requirements in that way, is how are your libraries and how are your campuses and institutions addressing non-compliant patrons? And specifically in terms of mask compliance. I'm seeing some messages talking about directions from institutions as a whole. I think those are really helpful. Giving out masks, definitely. One of the things my library is thinking about possibly doing is what I'm kind of describing to my staff as a positive reinforcement campaign. I actually stole this from our HR department, who did this a couple of years ago when they were trying to get more staff members to remember to wear college issued name tags to meetings and things like that. And we're going to have little raffle tickets that we were thinking about handing out to library patrons when we saw them wearing a mask in the library just randomly, and then having a drawing at the end of the semester and things like that. We talked about giving them candy, but since you have to remove your mask to eat candy, and at least with candy, sometimes our patrons aren't always good at that delayed gratification aspect of things. So we got rid of the candy idea. Yeah, the security question is an interesting one too. I know that was the official word. One of the directions I was given at our campus is that we could call security if we had patrons that refused to wear masks or refused to leave and things like that. The trouble with that we've had is our security department is relatively small, and so in talking to them, that was going to prove difficult to implement or to continue in things. I'm really hoping that we won't have those kinds of issues, but I think it's important to talk to staff ahead of time and to have plans related to that.
Nathan, and this is from the public library side of things. I know that there's some folks like at public library systems that have developed marketing materials for masks, like encouraging folks to put them on and things like that. So I don't know if anybody on this call has developed any materials that they're proud of and would be maybe willing for others to just, plug and play,
I thought about having a virtual mask, like an Instagram mask fashion show, letting people take pictures of their mask and post it on our Instagram channel or things like that. I've seen some vendors that are selling relatively inexpensively light colored or white cloth masks that could be easily drawn on or dyed or decorated in some way. And so I'm just kind of look for some non-punitive ways to encourage the usage and things like that. Oh, cool. Yeah. Thanks, Ellen, for the signage templates. That would have been it. I'm reading Sarah's comment about the figure of the school's founder having a mask on them. That could easily be a I think a good WiLS photo contest there, because I've seen lots of nice pictures of institutions and libraries and things like that that have masks on a sculpture or a statue or pictures in some cases too.
do some sort of a mask up Wisconsin libraries sort of campaign. Yeah, that's great.
Very cool. So, not just masks, but that'd be, and earlier on in the chat, Jennifer from WiLS had asked about a specific product that people were possibly interested in. But what other new products or existing products in new ways are you using to provide virtual or social distancing services? So either something that you wish you had, or maybe a product that you already had or purchased specifically to offer new services. A lot of us have moved to doing different things with curbside service or other things like that. But I'd be curious to know what kind of products do you need, or what kind of products are you using in different ways? I know one of the things I'm looking for is this was an existing problem at my library that we've been looking for a better product for, and I'm anticipating that the need will increase as we enter into the new semester, but is looking for a better room reservation solution than what we have. We've been using SpringShare's libcal and some forms that way, but I'd like something that's a little more robust in that way. Yeah, definitely, Pete. I will let you know when if I find something good, because it's a struggle, especially and something that fits. We only have 3 group study rooms, but they're booked solid from 8 in the morning till 8-10 at night, kind of thing. And so some of the more enterprise level solutions don't fit with our needs in terms of pricing and other things like that. But yeah, definitely. What other kinds of things are people interested in or looking at? Oh yeah, let's talk about that. Thank you, Sarah. So Sarah asked a question about people's student worker situations. I know at my institution we are going to have student workers return to the library, although I have had one student worker and his family contact me already saying that he would like to continue to work in the library, but doesn't feel comfortable working at the public service desk. And could we accommodate that kind of thing? And that's in this particular individual's case, that's something that we can do because they have some other training within the library to do some technical services work, not on the front desk and things like that. But that causes some challenges, and certainly I know there are some campuses where utilizing student workers is not a decision that's been made yet. So. Any other folks have examples or comments about what they're doing with student workers in their institutions? Yeah, lots of us are still working that out for sure. That's great information, Jenny, too, about virtual job fairs or virtual contact with students. Recruiting is always a little different when you're not having a lot of face-to-face in that way. Excellent. So we've got just a few minutes left. I have one last question I'd like to pose, and this is kind of a big picture, broad question in that way, which is how do you see this situation, the pandemic, impacting your library long term? And that could be in both positive or negative ways.
Yep, I'd agree with Nancy on more electronic, less print. Lawrence has traditionally been a very sort of, you know, books anyway. Print is, you know, is what we want, is what the faculty wants, is what the students want. So we haven't gotten big into electronic stuff. But now all of a sudden, boom, we need, we're moving in a digital way. And I think that's going to continue. I think people are getting more comfortable with virtual reference, virtual instruction, that kinds of stuff, and that will continue. We're creating, you know, all those little instructional videos that everybody's doing. Those, you know, turn out to be very useful, whether we're, you know, back in person or not. And so, you know, some of this stuff is going to be really helpful down the road. I hope anyway.
Most definitely. I agree, Pete. I definitely see that continuing and possibly accelerating transition from print to electronic, and also from in-person to virtual in terms of our services in a lot of ways. On a smaller level, I don't think we're ever going to get rid of curbside pickup. Our patrons absolutely love it, and it's not a hassle for us to run the system at all. So I've already kind of told my staff we should plan for how we're going to run curbside pickup long term.
Yeah, our friends in the campus mail office have been delivering stuff on campus all summer long, well, in spring and summer, and they're happy to continue doing that. So, yeah, faculty love it. Students on campus love it. The issue will be the the quarantine, however long that goes on, because it slows things down so much. But yeah, those kinds of services, people get used to them, and they're popular and they're not so tough to do.
Definitely. And when you start running them, then I think we get to see other ways that they might impact our patrons or be useful and things like that. Lots of people talking about financial changes and looking at how we negotiate or work with different purchasing and vendor relationships changing and things. I think that's definitely the case too, especially as we look more digital or more e-resource oriented. That becomes even more essential than before. Yeah, excellent. Well, I know we're at the hour mark here and things, so I just want to personally thank everyone for coming and participating in the conversation and things. I've learned a lot and enjoyed hearing from all of you and things. And Melissa, I don't know if you or Andy or anyone from WiLS has any closing things.
Yeah, well, I would like to offer my sincere and great thanks to you, Nathan. You facilitated a wonderful conversation and had a lot of questions, I think, that we all have about reopening and providing the services that we need to provide. So thank you so much for doing that. For folks on this call, we did record this. We will get that recording out to you sometime in the next week or so, and I'll try to pull out some of the important resources that were shared in the chat just to make it a little bit easier for you to get to those as well. If you are interested in possibly facilitating a future conversation or think that this is useful and would like to maybe do it once campuses have really opened up in the fall and touch base again, just let me know. You can send me an email, give me a phone call, and we're happy to try to work another call out with people. So with that, I just want to wish everybody a happy Friday and a happy weekend, and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye.